The Royal Air Force is the United Kingdom's aerial warfare force. Formed towards the end of the First World War on 1 April 1918, it is the oldest independent air force in the world. Following victory over the Central Powers in 1918, the RAF emerged as, at the time, the largest air force in the world. Since its formation, the RAF has taken a significant role in British military history, in particular, playing a large part in the Second World War, where it fought its most famous campaign, the Battle of Britain. The RAF's mission is to support the objectives of the British Ministry of Defence, which are to provide the capabilities needed to ensure the security and defence of the United Kingdom and overseas territories, including against terrorism, to support the government's foreign policy objectives, particularly in promoting international peace and security. The RAF describe its mission statement as to provide an agile, adaptable and capable air force that, person for person, is second to none, and that makes a decisive air power contribution in support of the UK defence mission. The mission statement is supported by the RAF's definition of air power, which guides its strategy. Air power is defined as the ability to project power from the air and space to influence the behavior of people or the course of events. Today, the Royal Air Force maintains an operational fleet of various types of aircraft, described by the RAF as being leading edge in terms of technology. This largely consists of fixed-wing aircraft, including fighter and strike aircraft, airborne early warning and control aircraft, ISTAR and SIGINT aircraft, aerial refueling aircraft and strategic and tactical transport aircraft. The majority of the RAF's rotary wing aircraft form part of the Tri-Service Joint Helicopter Command in support of ground forces. Most of the RAF's aircraft and personnel are based in the UK, with many others serving on operations or at long-established overseas bases. Although the RAF is the principal British air power arm, the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm and the British Army's Army Air Corps also deliver air power, which is integrated into the maritime, littoral and land environments. History. Origins. While the British were not the first to make use of heavier-than-air military aircraft, the RAF is the world's oldest independent air force. That is, the first air force to become independent of Army or Navy control. It was founded on 1 April 1918, with headquarters located in the former Hotel Cecil, during the First World War, by the amalgamation of the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service. At that time it was the largest air force in the world. After the war, the service was drastically cut and its interwar years were relatively quiet, with the RAF taking responsibility for the control of Iraq and executing a number of minor actions in other parts of the British Empire. The RAF's Naval Aviation Branch, the Fleet Air Arm, was founded in 1924 but handed over to Admiralty control on 24 May 1939. The RAF developed the doctrine of strategic bombing, which led to the construction of long-range bombers and became its main bombing strategy in the Second World War. Second World War. The RAF underwent rapid expansion prior to and during the Second World War. Under the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan of December 1939, the air forces of British Commonwealth countries trained and formed Article 15 squadrons for service with RAF formations. Many individual personnel from these countries, and exiles from occupied Europe, also served with RAF squadrons. By the end of the war, the Royal Canadian Air Force had contributed more than 30 squadrons to serve in RAF formations. Similarly, approximately a quarter of Bomber Command's personnel were Canadian. Additionally, the Royal Australian Air Force represented around 9% of all RAF personnel who served in the European and Mediterranean theatres. In the Battle of Britain in 1940, the RAF defended the skies over Britain against the numerically superior German Luftwaffe, in what is perhaps the most prolonged and complicated air campaign in history. The Battle of Britain contributed significantly to the delay and subsequent indefinite postponement of Hitler's plans for an invasion of the United Kingdom. In the House of Commons on 20 August, prompted by the ongoing efforts of the RAF, Prime Minister Winston Churchill eloquently made a speech to the nation, where he said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." The largest RAF effort during the war was the strategic bombing campaign against Germany by Bomber Command. While RAF bombing of Germany began almost immediately upon the outbreak of war, under the leadership of Air Chief Marshal Harris, these attacks became increasingly devastating from 1942 onward as new technology and greater numbers of superior aircraft became available. The RAF adopted nighttime area bombing on German cities such as Hamburg and Dresden, and developed precision bombing techniques for specific operations, such as the Dambusters raid by No. 617 Squadron, or the Amiens prison raid known as Operation Jericho. Cold War era. Following victory in the Second World War, the RAF underwent significant reorganization, as technological advances in air warfare saw the arrival of jet fighters and bombers. During the early stages of the Cold War, one of the first major operations undertaken by the Royal Air Force was in 1948 and the Berlin Airloft, codenamed Operation Plainfire. Between the 26th of June and the lifting of the Russian blockade of the city on the 2nd of May, the RAF provided 17% of the total supplies delivered during the event, using Avro Yorks, Douglas Dakotas flying to Gatow Airport and Short Sunderlands flying to Lake Havel. Before Britain developed its own nuclear weapons, the RAF was provided with American nuclear weapons under Project E. However, following the development of its own arsenal, the British government elected on 16 February 1960 to share the country's nuclear deterrent between the RAF and submarines of the Royal Navy, first deciding on 13 April to concentrate solely on the Air Force's V-bomber fleet. These were initially armed with nuclear gravity bombs, later being equipped with the Blue Steel missile. Following the development of the Royal Navy's Polaris submarines, the strategic nuclear deterrent passed to the Navy's submarines on 30 June 1969. With the introduction of Polaris, the RAF's strategic nuclear role was reduced to a tactical one, using W-177 gravity bombs. This tactical role was continued by the V-bombers into the 1980s and until 1998 by Tornado GR-1s. For much of the Cold War, the primary role of the RAF was the defense of Western Europe against potential attack by the Soviet Union, with many squadrons based in West Germany. With the decline of the British Empire, global operations were scaled back, and RAF Far East Air Force was disbanded on 31 October 1971. Despite this, the RAF fought in many battles in the Cold War period. In June 1948, the RAF commenced Operation Fire Dog against Malayan terrorists during the Malayan Emergency. Operations continued for the next 12 years until 1960, with aircraft flying out of RAF Tengar and RAF Butterworth. The RAF played a minor role in the Korean War, with flying boats taking part. From 1953 to 1956, the RAF Avro Lincoln squadrons carried out anti-Mau Mau operations in Kenya using its base at RAF Eastleigh. The Suez Crisis in 1956 saw a large RAF role, with aircraft operating from RAF Akrotiri and RAF Nicosia on Cyprus and RAF Luca and RAF Alpha on Malta as a part of Operation Musketeer. The confrontation against Indonesia in the early 1960s did see use of RAF aircraft, but due to a combination of deft diplomacy and selective ignoring of certain events by both sides, it never developed into a full-scale war. One of the largest actions undertaken by the RAF during the Cold War was the air campaign during the 1982 Falklands War. in which the RAF operated alongside the Fleet Air Arm. During the war, RAF aircraft were deployed in the mid-Atlantic at RAF Ascension Island, and a detachment from No. 1 Squadron was deployed with the Royal Navy, operating from the aircraft carrier HMS Hermes. RAF pilots also flew missions using the Royal Navy's Sea Harriers in the air-to-air combat role. Following a British victory, the RAF remained in the South Atlantic to provide air defence to the Falkland Islands, based at RAF Mount Pleasant. Since 1990, the RAF has been involved in several large-scale operations, including the 1991 Gulf War, the 1999 Kosovo War, the 2001 Present War in Afghanistan, the 2003 invasion and war in Iraq, and most recently the 2011 intervention in Libya. The RAF's 90th anniversary was commemorated on 1 April 2008 by a flypast of 9 Red Arrows and 4 Typhoons along the Thames, in a straight line from just south of London City Airport Tower Bridge, the London Eye, the RAF Memorial and the Ministry of Defence building. 4 major defence reviews have been conducted since the end of the Cold War. The 1990 Options for Change, the 1998 Strategic Defence Review, the 2003 Delivering Security in a Changing World, and the 2010 Strategic Defence and Security Review. All 4 defence reviews have resulted in steady reductions in manpower and numbers of aircraft, especially combat aircraft such as fast jets. As part of the latest 2010 Strategic Defence and Security Review, the BAE Systems Nimrod MRA-4 maritime patrol aircraft was cancelled due to overspending and missing deadlines. Other reductions saw total RAF manpower reduced by 5,000 personnel to a trained strength of 33,000 and the early retirement of the Joint Force Harrier aircraft. The Harrier GR-7, GR-9. In recent years, fighter aircraft on quick reaction alert have been increasingly required to scramble in response to efforts made by the Russian Air Force to approach British airspace. On 24 January 2014 in the Houses of Parliament, Conservative MP and Minister of State for the Armed Forces, Andrew Robertson, announced that the RAF's QRA force had been scrambled almost 30 times in the last 3 years. 11 times during 2010, 10 times during 2011 and 8 times during 2012. RAF Coningsby in Lincolnshire and RAF Lossiemouth in Moray both provide Quick Reaction Alert, or QRA, and scramble their fighter jets within minutes to meet or intercept aircraft which give cause for concern. Lossiemouth generally covers the northern sector, while Coningsby provides QRA in the south. Typhoon pilot Flight Lieutenant Noel Rees describes how QRA duty works. At the start of the scaled QRA response, civilian air traffic controllers might see on their screens an aircraft behaving erratically, not responding to their radio calls, or note that it's transmitting a distress signal through its transponder. Rather than scramble Typhoons at the first hint of something abnormal, a controller has the option to put them on a higher level of alert, a call to cockpit. In this scenario, the pilot races to the hardened aircraft shelter and does everything short of starting his engines. On 4 October 2015, a final stand-down saw the end of more than 70 years of RAF search and rescue provision in the UK. The RAF and Royal Navy's Westland Sea King fleets, after over 30 years of service, were retired. A civilian contractor, Bristow Helicopters, has taken over responsibility for UK search and rescue, under a private finance initiative with newly purchased Sikorsky S-92 and Augusta Westland AW189 aircraft, while the Royal Navy's SAR force will continue to operate until the end of the year. The new contract means that by 2016, all UK SAR coverage will be provided by Bristow's.